on PrimeTime Politics, asking for unity.
Canada needs to be united.
The finance minister defends Ottawa's response to U.S. tariff threats as Saskatchewan pushes back on what Ottawa is reportedly prepared to do. Coming up, we'll speak with Premier Scott Moe. We'll get details and also find out why he thinks there needs to be a federal election now. Also,
you know, if it comes to Alberta or Quebec, that's their choice.
With provinces pursuing different tactics to respond to Donald Trump, is the Team Canada approach Ottawa is hoping for dead? We'll convene our Ottawa bureau chiefs. Plus, Alberta's deputy premier on the province's new border plan. This is PrimeTime Politics. Hello, everyone. I'm Michael Serapio. We'll get to those stories in a moment, but we want to begin with Canada Post because earlier on this Friday, the Labour Minister announced he is asking the Canada Industrial Relations Board to intervene, asking the board to determine if the two sides can come to an agreement before the end of the year. And if not, he is asking the board to order striking workers back to the job and appoint a special commission to sort out a solution before May the 23rd of next year. That would mean the strike and lockout would be put on a temporary pause, and it would force the Canadian Union of Postal Workers and Canada Post to keep operating under their expired agreement for another 5 months.
We've come up with what I think is an imaginative proposal to end the conflict in the near term and provide a path forward to both parties so that they can come themselves to a negotiated agreement. This will make no one happy, by the way, who's at the table. But as Labour Minister, my job is to work for my bosses are Canadians.
So it now goes to the Canada Industrial Relations Board for consideration. CUPW, for its part, is condemning the move, saying, quote, "This order continues a deeply troubling pattern in which the government uses its arbitrary powers to let employers off the hook, drag their feet, and refuse to bargain in good faith with workers and their unions." We will continue to follow this story. Well, to Premier Scott Moe now, who on Thursday evening turned to social media to share in part the following. Export taxes have never even been mentioned by the Prime Minister on either of the calls with premiers to discuss the U.S. tariff threat. That statement responding to news reports that suggest the federal government is considering export taxes as one possible response to U.S. tariff threats. And according to those reports, the goods being considered are high-demand exports like oil, uranium, and potash. Well, with more, we're now joined by the Saskatchewan Premier Scott Moe. Premier, thank you for making the time again.
Well, thank you so much.
Listen, I want to begin with that post that you shared because you say in it that export taxes were never discussed by the Prime Minister. You also say that they would be a betrayal of the Team Canada approach that Justin Trudeau keeps talking about. Can you build upon that? Why would you view it as a betrayal?
They've never been brought up. We've had 2 phone calls on, the concerns of President-elect Donald Trump, which have been primarily around the border. We've been through this discussion a few years ago under the previous Trump administration with steel and aluminum tariffs under Section 232. We were through it a decade ago with the country of origin labeling as well. Never have export tariffs been considered. Never have they been discussed by this Prime Minister, the previous one, and I wouldn't expect by the next one. That's the betrayal, is asking all premiers, and we're willing to work with the federal government to secure our borders, to engage with the incoming Trump administration at the secretary level, at the Senate level, at the Congress level, at the governor level, but never has it been discussed. And then yesterday we started being asked a number of questions on, export taxes on products that are specifically coming out of Saskatchewan and maybe Alberta, which is a betrayal of the people working in those industries, betrayal of all Canadians as well, as we shouldn't be taxing the products that we're producing. And it certainly is a betrayal to the Team Canada approach that the Prime Minister has asked for and the premiers are offering.
Mm-hmm. Now the argument is, though, that if you put this export tax, it makes things more expensive for Americans. It makes them think twice about imposing tariffs on Canadian goods. Talk to us about what your concern is with these export tax and what it would do to industry in your province.
Decimated. And I would suggest that if we get to an all-out tariff war across the board in North America, that we have failed. That we have failed as national and subnational leaders. There is a better path forward, and we've shown that time and time, whether it be in the lead up to the conclusion of the USMCA negotiations or whenever that might be. We need to work alongside the Trump administration, address his concerns are now our concerns, and I would suggest that when it comes to border security and drugs and precursing chemicals coming in, and illegal migrants coming into our nation. That's our concern as well as Canadians. And so an opportunity here for us to secure our borders and to engage in a conversation around we as Canadians and Americans work alongside one another to create an environment, and I would say a successful environment that provides not only us with energy, food, and manufacturing security, but provides our allied nations around the world with that to some degree as well. And so, let's get to work. Let's do the work that is here. Let's not look for a broad-based tariff war of any type. If we get to that point, North Americans are going to lose. And I would suggest the winners will be, other nations around the world that might not be our allies, nations like China.
Mm-hmm. Now, we heard from the finance minister earlier, and she was essentially saying that you and she had a phone call about your concerns. She talked about how we are hoping for the best, preparing for the worst. I'm wondering, in reference to that phone call with Chrystia Freeland, if anything stands out, whether or not you took any comfort from what she had to say to you.
We've had a couple of phone calls. Chrystia Freeland, the Deputy Prime Minister, has been on them, as with Dominic LeBlanc and the Prime Minister and other premiers. Never has export tariffs been raised, been raised on any of those calls, nor should they be, is my position. And I asked Chrystia Freeland, and I'll be asking the Prime Minister to commit to that. And we should not be taxing the goods that we are producing, that Canadians are producing, and in any way. There is a path forward here. We need to work feverishly and work together, support one another in finding, our way to not having tariffs in North America. It doesn't benefit anyone in North America, regardless of what President-elect Trump is threatening. I think there's a way for us to find a better path. We need to find it. This is not an answer in an all-out trade and tariff war. Certainly not an answer.
Well, when you talk about a path forward, rather, you're also raising the idea of calling an election now so that Canadians can decide who will represent them in discussions with the United States. Do you not trust the current Prime Minister to carry out those discussions?
I'm one vote in all of Canada, and President-elect Trump has a strong mandate, probably the strongest mandate that I've seen in recent history, actually, as he sets to enter the White House. The Republican Party has a majority in the Senate and as well in the House, and a 4-year mandate to speak on behalf of Americans, and we don't have that. Our federal government is beyond what the 4 years that people would consider is the norm for any government to serve, and I think it's time. We're going to have an election anyway. We might as well have it sooner rather than later and ensure that we have someone sitting across the table negotiating with the incoming Trump administration or the newly appointed and inaugurated Trump administration that also has a 4-year mandate to speak on behalf of Canadians. I think this is a weakness that we have at the table right now, not necessarily the individuals that are at the table, but the fact that they don't have a mandate from Canadians. And a mandate would strengthen our bargaining position.
Mm-hmm. As I hear you speak, I'm wondering about the Team Canada approach. Again, this appeal from the Prime Minister. Is that Team Canada approach dead?
No, very much alive. We'll be in Toronto. I'll be in Toronto on Monday with the other premiers. There's some, differences in our approach, and some of the levers that maybe we have at the provincial level. At the end of the day, we need to stand by whoever our federal government is and engage alongside them. We need to engage collectively as premiers using the contacts that we have, and then each of us need to make decisions and engage as regional leaders as well. And so certainly, this coming together to support one another in this, in the conversation that needs to be had and the actions that may or may not need to be taken is important. And it's important that we are all there as subnational leaders and alongside whoever our federal government is. We've been here before. I've been here 2 or 3 times just in my time as Premier, and I guess we find ourselves here again. And the only path forward is for all of us to ensure that we are working together in the best interest of Canada. We're all Canadians first, and this is no time to abandon that.
Premier Scott Moe, always appreciate the time. Thank you for this.
Hey, you have a wonderful day, and if I don't talk to you again, you have a great holiday and a Merry Christmas.
And to you too. Happy holidays. Premier Moe is taking a different tactic than that of the Ontario Premier, but so is Alberta and Quebec. And here is what Premier Doug Ford had to say to those provinces today.
You know, if it comes to Alberta or Quebec, that's their choice. They believe in diplomacy. Good luck. Alberta has a surplus of, what, $130 billion in oil and gas, and that's their, God bless them, good for them. And as for Quebec, I always support Quebec as well.
Well, joining us now to talk about this are Robert Fife, Ottawa Bureau Chief for the Globe and Mail, Tonda MacCharles, Ottawa Bureau Chief for the Toronto Star, and Mia Rabson, Deputy Ottawa Bureau Chief for the Canadian Press. Hello to the three of you.
Hi there.
Thanks for having us.
So listen, as we said, we're getting this crosstalk, if you will, from the premiers, adopting different tactics as to how to react to Donald Trump and the tariff threat. You know, it makes me wonder, is the Team Canada approach that the Prime Minister is asking for, is that dead?
It certainly looks like it is. You know, you don't see the last time around, everybody was singing out of the same songbook, but that's not happening anymore. Doug Ford, the Ontario Premier, is more on message with Ottawa, but you have Danielle Smith, the Alberta Premier, and Scott Moe, the Saskatchewan Premier, giving entirely different messages, particularly when they spoke about possible export tariffs on oil and gas, for example, or potash. And you know, I don't think you're going to get a unified message this time around, because Mr. Trudeau is in deep political trouble. The mandate is almost over. He's 20 points behind the Conservatives. I just don't see that happening. And you don't even really see a uniformity of message from the business community either. I mean, they're much more critical of the government, particularly on the deficits and the handling of the economy. So I just don't see that happening now.
Yeah, Tonda, what do you say to that?
I mean, I don't know that there was ever a Team Canada this round anyway in the offing. And I think that the stakes are much higher. Last time, during the NAFTA renegotiations, the Trump administration targeted two sectors, but this is a broad-based threat to the economy, and everyone is feeling it and feeling the threat differently. And yeah, I mean, there are political dynamics at play right now in the country that don't seem to align to have a common front. Maybe to all of our discredit. You know, it's too bad that that isn't the case right now. I think that any divisions in the country will be exploited by the administration, and we're already seeing a little bit of wedge politics being played there. So, yeah, I don't know that it was ever alive this time around.
Yeah, well, and to your point about taking advantage of it, you know, Elon Musk going on to X this week, essentially calling Trudeau a tool. He'll be gone soon anyways, is what Elon Musk is saying.
Are you allowed to say that on TV?
Well, it's just tool. Tools, you know, tool time. It's used all the time. Mia, what do you say about this whole Team Canada approach?
Yeah, I sort of agree with Tonda. I'm not sure that it was ever there. I mean, the very first time the premiers and the Prime Minister met after the tariff threat was first made, Chrystia Freeland came out and she said, we need to be united, we need to be united. And it was very clear within 5 minutes that they were not united. Doug Ford came out, was clearly not on side. You do see signs here and there that they want some similar things. And you heard Chrystia Freeland today. She was asked with this idea of an export tariff, particularly on oil and gas. She seemed to hint that that's not where they're going. She's sort of, we need to have a unified approach. We're not going to do anything that sort of has some people offside. And that clearly would have those offside. So even though she didn't come out and say no to an export tariff, it seems like they're trying to still do that. But finding one or two things that everyone can agree on seems very, very unlikely at this point.
Welcome to Canada, right? So we're going to watch that very closely. But I also want to talk about the reporting that your paper's been doing, Bob, about the division right now between Chrystia Freeland and Justin Trudeau. Talk to us about that division. Is it basically Chrystia Freeland's pushing back on deficit spending?
Well, look, she made a commitment in the last budget that she would come in with a deficit of no more than $40.1 billion. Clearly, that's not going to be met now. The Prime Minister's office has been pushing spending, and the Finance Department did not like the idea of this GST two-month holiday or the $250 rebate. They thought it was economically unwise. In fact, it was described to me by people in the Finance Department as both embarrassing and stupid. And she's now, and then we know that they're now talking to Mark Carney, the former Bank of Canada, Bank of England governor, about coming back into government. And now we're hearing murmurs right after the Monday economic statement that there's possibly going to be a cabinet shuffle on Wednesday. And I think that cabinet shuffle depends on whether Mr. Carney decides whether he wants to join the government. Why he would want to join the government, I don't understand. But so I think she's hanging by a thread. And you know, but we've seen this movie before. I mean, you know, Bill Morneau resisted spending from the Prime Minister's office, and he was pushed out in a very humiliating fashion. And this seems to be the same thing that's going to be happening to Ms. Freeland, who, by the way, has been a much more loyal soldier than Mr. Morneau.
Yeah, well, in fact, today in the news conference, she was saying that she was just happy.
She basically cheered up when she was asked that question.
Yeah, absolutely. What do you make of this division that we seem to be getting, not only with these two individuals, but within cabinet overall?
Look, Bob can speak to their reporting on the Carney-Freeland tensions. The rumors of a cabinet shuffle have been ongoing all fall, and the last I had heard, possibly January, but maybe it will happen next week. They're long overdue for one, but will a cabinet refresh achieve anything other than replace some of the ministers, the 4 or 5 who are outgoing and the couple who've already left, and sort of redistribute the work? Will it put a fresh coat of paint on the government? I don't think so. They're going to count on the fall economic statement to do a little bit of that work, but it's late and the polls are pretty hard to reverse right now. So I'm not saying it's not going to happen, but Trump is a huge challenge for this government. I don't think even in waiting this long, it makes any difference. I don't think any one minister or several ministers are going to have a tighter relationship with any one or several cabinet appointees of Donald Trump. That would actually change things right now. So I think the challenge for the Trudeau government, the biggest challenge, is the Trump administration and its the fallout for this country. And whatever they can do to make that better, sure. But I don't know that a cabinet refresh is going to do it.
What do you think, Mia?
I think there's tension around any table that this government is at right now, and they've been down 20 points plus in the polls for more than a year. There's a lot of infighting. You always see it in any political party. When things are going well, everyone gets in line. When things aren't going well, things start to fall apart. And things haven't been going well for this government for a very long time. And everything that they're trying to do doesn't work. I mean, even the recent GST holiday that they introduced, they got 0 bump from it. They got no bump from Trump winning the election in the United States that they maybe had hoped that might help them. No matter what they do or what happens, they can't seem to get any kind of traction. And that is causing a lot of unhappy people, a lot of people questioning everything, and when nothing is working, the knives come out. I mean, it's sort of natural. So the infighting, it's not just between the Prime Minister and the Finance Minister, if that's happening.
And for this government, I mean, unlike previous changes and when there's been a change within the party, there's no obvious successor at this point to Mr. Trudeau. Even Mr. Carney's political skills, one can wonder how polished they will be if he just arrives on the scene. So yeah, I think that they don't have a silver bullet that's going to help them at this point.
Yeah, well, you openly question why would Mr. Carney want to be involved with this government in this moment in time. But if his leadership aspirations are true, wouldn't it make sense that he has to have some skin in the game and join at some point, particularly when the party's in trouble?
That makes the only logical sense. That has he cut some deal with the Prime Minister that maybe he's going to take a walk and he will come in and try to run for the leadership? I mean, I don't know that, because Mr. Carney himself, and even now people close to him, are all shutting down. So something is going on. If he does come in, look, he's an enormously talented person, but whether he has the political skills, I don't know. And whether it's going to Tonda's point, what could possibly save this government? It doesn't seem like anything can, because I think Canadians have made up their mind that it's time for a change, and that is a very, very, very difficult thing to overcome.
The only thing I would say is that we all need to bear in mind that everyone's responding to a perceived threat, and the perceived impact of a threat. And yet, we'll see in hard terms over the next several weeks, go into January and February, what Trump actually does. If he goes across the globe with these kinds of tariffs, punching at allies and enemies alike, and the response, and then how the government and all the premiers do manage to respond to that threat in very concrete terms. And so I just, we always say a week's a long time in politics. The next 6 months are going to be an eternity in politics, and I think it bears, you know, waiting to see how some of that plays, and politically how some of it plays. Will Mr. Poilievre be more adept at dealing with those threats? That's also a question I have.
Yeah, I also wonder about how real the threat is, because, you know, Donald Trump was on CNBC this week, and he basically said, you know,
I want to make a deal.
Yeah, or sorry, it was Meet the Press. It was one of the two. But he basically said, you know, I like tariffs because they're good, but he also likes tariffs because it allows for other things to come about. And I'm wondering if that really is what this Canada is all about.
It's his sledgehammer.
This is his party, and he is. Yeah. We are living his dream right now. We are playing everything that he wants. The reaction, the focus. You know, the fact that people kind of forget he's not actually the president again yet. Exactly. You know, he is still holding court at Mar-a-Lago, waiting for everybody to do his bidding, even though he's not been sworn into office. This is exactly what he wanted, but at the same time, most countries don't have a choice, because the United States, particularly for Canada, is that important. I think, what is it, 77% of our exports go to the United States. We don't have, like, there's just not enough other places for us to deal with that we can't respond to this as quickly and as decisively as they are.
Careful too, because he won because Americans felt that they were falling behind economically. Yeah. If you start putting tariffs on and people start responding with tariffs back, that forces up the cost of living on Americans, particularly on the working class people who supported him. So, you know, he talks a good game, but look, we never know with Donald Trump, but one would think that they also have to understand that there are repercussions on American consumers if he goes this route, because countries are just not going to sit down and take it. They're not just going to accept tariffs, they're going to respond. Yeah,
which is essentially what happened with steel and aluminum, right? So,
well, one of his big promises was to cut energy bills for households in half within 18 months. And if he puts a 25% import tariff on about 1/5 of their oil supply, that's not happening.
And a lot of Canadian companies are owned by Americans.
Yeah, absolutely. And you know what that is, Bob? Our Trump card. Dad humor since 2017. Bob, Tonda, Mia, thank you very much.
Thank you, Michael.
Okay, let's get back to the border now, because as we said earlier, Alberta is taking a different tactic than Ontario, and part of that includes an investment of $29 million for a new border patrol. This is money for officers, tactical equipment, patrol dogs, and drones to demonstrate to U.S. officials the province is taking security at the border seriously. Well, with more on Alberta's border plan, we're now joined by Deputy Premier and Alberta Minister for Public Safety, Mike Ellis. Deputy Premier, thank you for taking the time.
Well, thanks for having me on the show.
Listen, I want to begin with the critical border zone that your government is creating to ramp up security. It will be 2 kilometers deep. What are you hoping to actually accomplish with that zone?
Well, it's going to be, we're going to be looking at this sort of, we'll call it a red zone under the Critical Infrastructure Defense Act, where we got Minister Amory that's going to be working on that particular zone. It's really just going to be an area just obviously north of the border that's going to allow really law enforcement to be able to intervene if they have to and provide the necessary services in order to keep the border safe, right? It's just, there's nothing, untoward about it. Law enforcement is always going to continue to have the ability to arrest and do what they need to do in order to keep the border safe. And but it's just to let people know, and more importantly, let those who are committing crimes know that we take this very seriously.
Now, there were reports saying that arrests could be made within that zone without warrants. Is that actually going to be the case?
Yeah, I think there's a little bit of miscommunication that's going on out there. I mean, as you probably know, Michael, I used to be a former law enforcement officer myself. Law enforcement, they still have to have reasonable suspicion. They still have to have reasonable probable grounds. And quite frankly, nothing is going to change. An arrest that occurs when somebody commits a crime is technically an arrest without warrant. So I think there's been a little miscommunication out there, but just to be perfectly clear to you and all your viewers, nothing has changed in regards to the law.
Okay, so nothing changed in regards to the law. Alberta is the first jurisdiction to announce a border security plan since Donald Trump set out that tariff threat 3 weeks ago. I'm wondering whether or not these were discussions taking place before that post was put up, or are these in direct response to what we heard from Donald Trump?
Yeah, let me just say that they're not in a direct response to Donald Trump. This is something that the Premier had put in actually in my mandate letter in July of 2023. We talked about U.S. border protection. I can tell you that, we'd already been doing a lot of the pre-planning when it comes to this, and this is why we have officers that are trained with interdiction training, with commercial vehicle training, and that we're going to be able to deploy many of these officers in January, because we'd already been doing the pre-work on this.
Okay, already doing the pre-work. The border is a federal responsibility. There would have to be some coordination with Canadian officials, U.S. officials. I'm wondering if there's going to be a jurisdictional issue with cross currents in terms of command here.
So I met actually with the CBSA representatives as well as the RCMP just the other day before the announcement. I can tell you that in my conversations with them, I thought it was very welcome news in order to augment and support kind of the services that they are doing. We already know that the RCMP have been having some challenges regarding authorized strength levels, and certainly, as I've stated here in Alberta, we want to do whatever we can to augment and support all law enforcement within the province. And of course, we all know that the CBSA, they're doing their job at the border, but I think any sort of additional help, I would say, was welcome news.
Additional help. I'm wondering how you're going to coordinate that, though. Will there be one command structure, or will there be three agencies that kind of work parallel of each other, communicating only when it's necessary?
As I indicated to the team, I say communication is part of an essential and productive operation. I'll let the law enforcement agencies decide how the command structure is going to look. Obviously, from the sheriff's perspective, they are peace officers, so they will be working very, very closely with the police of jurisdiction, which will be the RCMP. Certainly, if indeed arrests are made, they'll be working in conjunction with the RCMP. And of course, part of that communication is also was similar into working with the CBSA.
Mm-hmm. Now, Ottawa is expected to unveil its own border plan next week. I'm wondering if you have any hopes for that plan, anything you're looking for directly?
Yeah, I mean, look, we're not sitting idly by, which is why we've been kind of preparing for this sort of thing for the last year and a half. I look forward to whatever they're going to be announcing on Monday, I believe, is when they're going to be announcing this. And if there is a way that we can continue to collaborate again to provide that security at the border, I'm certainly looking forward to that. Again, I've said this very publicly. This is very much a two-way street. Although there are some concerns that the Americans have regarding fentanyl, I've been very clear that we have some concerns regarding illegal guns as well as illicit drugs and human trafficking from the United States into Canada. And this is why Premier Smith has reached out to the governor of Montana, and we're hoping to work very collaboratively on this approach.
Well, we are watching to see how it all goes. But Deputy Premier, thank you so much for the time. I appreciate it.
Thank you very much.
And that is Primetime Politics for this episode. I'm Michael Serapio. For everyone here at CPAC, thank you for watching. We're back next week. Until then, have a great weekend.